protection agents. Okay. Zoom is talking to me. Ooh, that was a little scary. In collaboration with the Environmental Protection Agency and the Long Island Sound Study. Major funding is from EPA through the Long Island Sound Study, with additional funding from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Okay, next. Just gonna do a quick overview of the grant program. As described in the slide before you, the purpose of the grant program is to restore the health and living resources of Long Island Sound. You might ask at this point, why offer grants in the upper basin states of Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire? Long Island Sound, can I see it from Massachusetts? No, but it's there. The Connecticut River Valley land area really channels rainfall and snow melt to creeks, streams, and rivers that eventually to outflow from outflow points, including the Sound. And we want to work with you to address pollution loading in all of those waterways and make for a healthier landscape for all. The program aims to foster delivery of the Long Island Sound Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan, also known again among its friends as the CCMP. This is really a blueprint for shared conservation in the Sound's watershed. And I highlight the CCMP because for those planning to or considering submitting to the Futures Fund, the most competitive proposals will reference the CCMP. Happily, we have some resources to help you create that link between your project and the CCMP, which I'll discuss a little later. The different types of grants and range, the exciting part of the request for proposals. We're looking for implementation of shovel-ready projects that result in quantifiable pollutant prevention. The most competitive projects will be those that address water quality at a larger or more comprehensive scale, such as the level of a neighborhood, waterfront, or downtown. And I know a lot of the municipal partners do really think in that way because they need to address things like MS4 compliance, et cetera. So I think where you can address things at a larger or more comprehensive scale benefits your community, also makes for a more competitive proposal. We also, so those grants are $50,000 to $1.5 million. We also have planning proposed grants, which are $50,000 to $500,000. And these are projects that address a real wide variety of planning, from community priority setting, watershed planning, alternatives analysis, suitability, feasibility assessments, conceptual planning, all the way through permitting and final design. So that's $50,000 to $500,000. And we like to believe that tees you up for future money from us or other potential funding sources, because we know, yes, planning money is not always perhaps the sexiest item. Yay, let's develop a plan. But that planning money can really tee you up to access other funds that you might not have available planning dollars. The project performance period, generally 24 months, although 36 months is also possible for larger scale implementation projects. And if you think you have one of those, you can ask us about that. You can ask Throwe, send a note to Kim and just say, hey, would this fall into a 36-monther or a 24-monther? So we can definitely provide you with that information. Eligible applicants: 501c, state, local government, tribal governments and organizations, and educational institutions. So here's something for municipal government to think about. If you're not able to apply directly for a community project, maybe you lack staff resources or time to manage a grant, you could work with a local partner at an NGO or an educational institute to apply and be the applicant and grantee of record for you. And then your costs can be built into that budget in a category called subawards. So for example, an NGO applies on behalf of a municipal government. The NGO in their personnel section of the budget put some staff time in there. But the town is going to or city also is going to play a role in delivery. So it would say Turner's Fall, Massachusetts, and it would be in subaward, and you would be able to get some of your costs covered there. So again, that's a mechanism, because I understand sometimes with local government, it can be a real challenge to actually develop and deliver these projects, and having a non-governmental partner or other partner can be beneficial to you. Match, always the big question. Match is 25% of the total requested from Futures Fund. It can be cash or in kind. It has to be non-federal in source. It has to be related to project being delivered, and it must be expended during your project start and end date. Here's the good news. We don't care. Cash, in kind, match, yay, no problem there. You don't have to have all the match in hand at the time that you apply. Your match can change over time based on those factors that I described, non-federal in source, related to project delivery, something that occurs during the start and end date of your project. That said, you will be held accountable to the total match number at the end of your project. So if you said, I'm asking for, I'm going to give you $25,000 in match, non-federal in source, and it's going to be made up of Boys and Girl Scouts helping us with riparian restoration, and cash match from a private foundation. Maybe you have more hours with the Boys and Girl Scouts and you have fewer dollars coming in from that private funder. That kind of adjustment we can deal with. So no worries there, but you will be held to the final match amount at the period at the end of your project. And so it's just something to remember. We honestly do try to adapt with you over time. Our timeline. Hey, the RFP dropped yesterday. What a great day to have a webinar. So you can take a look at that, and many of you may have received notification of that already. But this is a really good time over the next 8 or 9 weeks to really share your ideas and get feedback. We can't read a proposal or do something like that, but we actually have a mechanism through Kim to give you feedback on your project, written and verbal, and to provide some support for its development. And I think we're pretty good at providing useful feedback, so don't hesitate to ask. Again, the RFP opened yesterday, yay. The proposals will be due May 10th, 2023. And your award notification will be by the first week of November of 2023. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here we are. Is my project in the watershed? What an interesting question. The map shown on the slide is a snapshot of the Long Island Sound watershed boundaries in Massachusetts. If you're not sure, this map is interactive. The link to the map is in the request for proposals, which is open, yay. And you're able to drill down on your potential project location by entering things like an address or a city, and you can see whether you're in the boundary or you're outside the boundary. Next slide, please. This is the fun part. Examples, types of projects. So let's get to the interesting part of this presentation. What types of projects are eligible for funding? You'll note some repetition in what's eligible. Green infrastructure to prevent nitrogen and nutrient loading. On-site wastewater treatment systems to reduce and at its source. Watershed planning, that would be in the form of an EPA 9-element plan, which should in part focus on, drumroll, nitrogen. Stream channel reconnection to floodplains to promote nitrogen removal, in-stream restoration, replacing culverts, road stream crossings, low-cost retrofits at wastewater treatment plants, to, you guessed it, prevent nitrogen. The photo you see on the right really makes these priorities real. It's a green infrastructure project in a parking area designed to address pollutants flowing from just over a 1 acre rainfall catchment area of the parking lot to the Connecticut River and downstream to Long Island Sound in the village of Turners Falls, Massachusetts. So this was kind of an interesting project, and you can see it's capturing rainwater, and there's some nice signage to tell people what they're looking at, and you know, why it's a good project for the community. Again, your ideas would be welcome, so please do plan to send to Kim at Throwe Environmental, and we can potentially give you some feedback if you find it useful, or you may just know as a result of this webinar that, yeah, we can do this. Say that to yourself. Yeah, we could do this. Okay. Examples of municipal and other grants in Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Connecticut. We thought we'd cast a wider net because we're still looking for projects in lovely states like Massachusetts to address those downstream impacts to the sound. So here are some examples. Wastewater treatment facility. Planning for an actual upgrades to wastewater treatment facilities in Chicopee and Springfield, Massachusetts. You see a really big difference in the size of the grants. This is because we raised the minimum request. It's now $50,000. Chicopee was a planning grant, which hopefully will, as noted, open doors for implementation dollars. So they were a relatively small grant at the time that we had grants below $50,000. Now it's a $50,000 minimum. And then Springfield, which is doing optimization and equipment improvements at their wastewater treatment facility, received $290,000. And they're focusing on optimizing the plant to reduce nitrogen loading. Bed and Bank. The Connecticut River Conservancy and Trout Unlimited are both working with different types of properties to restore riparian areas, wetlands, floodplains, with grants ranging from smaller project, Utley, Vermont, Trout Unlimited, and that was $143,000 to basically do a riparian restoration project. And then the Connecticut River Conservancy is reaching out to a variety of potential property owners, rural, et cetera, to install these types of improvements to reduce nitrogen. Green infrastructure, low impact development. I know a lot of you are interested in this one. So some examples from Connecticut may be interesting because they do aim to reduce imperviousness in downtowns with green infrastructure and low impact development improvements, as well as underground storage, stormwater management of these grants. These were around $250,000, and they really do take, for the most part, a green-gray approach. They're removing impervious parking area and installing green infrastructure like pervious pavers, and then lid like underground storage management systems. And they're also putting in bioretention planters. And this project in the town of Trumbull is going to reduce sediment, nitrogen, and stormwater runoff. And it's a $250,000 grant, which is great. The city of Norwalk, again, had a big public parking lot, and it was a big source of stormwater runoff and flooding and lots of issues. So they, again, removed impervious asphalt, installed pretreatment curb cuts and a sump. It distributes the water to native tree filters, and they installed subsurface bioretention cells connected to those tree filters to reduce flooding and stormwater. And they're addressing nitrogen and bacteria. The grant was $250,000, and we have pictures. It's very cool. I talked about the town of Montague with the project in Turners Falls. So next slide, please. I kind of like this one because with the borough of Naugatuck, they're removing impervious pavement and constructing low impact development and green infrastructure and this is, again, at a downtown scale, using both GI and LID. They created a really strong link to reducing stormwater pollution, to address water quality issues. And in a proposal, they sent us a picture of their downtown, what they were proposing to do. And then the Naugatuck River, showing the relationship of what they're doing to benefiting this river, which flows downstream to Long Island Sound. So it's something to think about. And I think it's a fairly healthy grant at over $500,000 to address these issues at a downtown level. Okay, thank you. Ooh, good move on the slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm going to just jump in here because I have been monitoring the chat and we do have some time for questions.
Great.
I know I recognize a couple of the folks that I've been talking with as a field liaison, and I just want to put it out there. Do folks feel like they have their questions about eligibility for green infrastructure projects answered through this, or are there any follow-on questions? We have a couple of minutes.
Right.
Any hands?
Right.
Oh, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay,
Hi,
Yanni. Hi, Yanni.
I've never applied for this funding source before. Do you require that the match be identified prior to the application, or just that there's a commitment to meet that 25% amount if awarded?
What a good question. Okay. So we actually, in the application, when you go online, it's an online system, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail a little bit later. You're going to be asked what your sources of match are, to give a little description and the amount. Maybe you're a little uncertain at this point, but you're feeling okay that you're going to be able to meet that match amount. Do the best you can to show how you'll reach that match amount. Again, remember I said it can change as long as you follow the general rules: cash or in kind, non-federal in source, during the project period of performance. So do your best, and you can. It's interesting, in the match section, it actually says intend to apply, received. So you can make those choices. But again, we all understand that sometimes match does change. So yes, do your best job. And I'll tell you something about match. It's not just this kind of like crazy thing you see with every federal funding source. Maybe it is, I don't know. But it's more, it also tells us the level of interest, commitment, engagement of your partners, other resources that you bring to the table that contribute to success. So think about it that way as well. You're kind of representing how resourced and robust what you're proposing to do is. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks, Lynn. We have another question that I do want to put out there right now to you, Lynn, because this comes up frequently in talking with folks. So it says, for planning level grants, how much do we need to know about potential nitrogen loading at this point? Can we use research to show estimated levels of nitrogen via research, i.e. nitrogen loading in soil, or estimated erosion control, sedimentation equivalences? Or do we have to have site-specific data?
Okay, so all the items that you just recommended, research. I saw a proposal recently where there's a lot of good information about certain green infrastructure or low impact development practices, their potential impact. For example, pocket wetlands are frequently known to be really good places to do that capture and filtration. And there's just some general research around those. So some of the things that you talked about would be very useful. As specific as you can get. I mean, implementation, you do have to calculate the specific and reduction aspects of it. Do your best job to talk about the types of practices and the size of the site. And if you can't get to a specific number, that's fine, because in your metrics, if it's not an implementation project, you're not going to say 25 pounds of nitrogen reduced because it's just a plan. So in your narrative, talk about the potential impact of the types of things that you're planning for. And I think that'll be fine. Bessie, what do you think? Can I get your insight on this?
And on what the best metric is for planning?
No. I think the question is, for a planning grant, they're not going to use the N reduction metric in the proposal. What their product is, the product is going to be a plan. But what they're asking is, we can't really identify at this point the specific N reduction or prevention associated with this, because we're just doing a plan. So it was just suggested research or other information to say, these are the types of practices that we're considering. And this is, research tells us we're getting this level of treatment. Do you think that is a sufficient?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, you can, given that it's a plan and you don't know what you're going to get in the end, you could say, this is what we hope that we can achieve, or this is what we would like to see. If you truly have no idea, then you can say on average, the options that are available seem to be reducing nitrogen by this much, or reducing nutrients or sediment by so much. You know, on average, this is going to make a meaningful impact. It's not going to have a zero impact, is really what we're trying to say. So even if you don't know what you're doing, you can say anything is better than what we're doing now, because right now we're losing this much per year. Because even if you can't say how much you're going to reduce, you can certainly do, like, there are many quick models that you can use. NRCS has a ton that can be like, this is how we can calculate what's being lost into the system right now, and that's what we want to address. We don't know how well we're going to address it, but we're going to address it.
So there's two ways. Take home is what you're losing now, and that you need to address it with these practices, or we're going to address it with these practices, and permeable paver works in this way, or pocket wetlands do this, or whatever, based on research. So I think those are both great strategies. Kim, I want to keep us moving. Well, thank you, Bessie. Bessie's my project officer for Futures Fund, so you'll get to see her a little bit. So Kim, other things?
Yeah, thank you both. I think we should move ahead. So we're going to transition over to Bessie Wright. Bessie works with EPA Region 1, and she's going to provide a little presentation on other potential program linkages that you could consider. Bessie's just going to share her screen in a minute. And I'm really glad we had a chance to focus on that, because that's a question that comes up quite often, Lynn. So I'm glad that we were able to provide some time for that. So Bessie, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time today, and we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, just checking that I turned off my mute. That works?
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. Hi, everybody. I am Bessie Wright, and I do work with Environmental Protection Agency in the New England office. And today, really what I wanted to talk about was the additional resources that municipalities can look at as options when you're looking at what your project is. Obviously, we would love to see you apply for the Futures Fund, but if there are projects that just don't seem to fit with Futures Fund, these are other resources from EPA as well as from the state of Massachusetts that you could be looking at. And I don't know a lot about them. I am just going to show you where you can find out about them, and find out whether or not your project is eligible. And there is a slide in the PowerPoint that will give you the links to everything that I am showing you right now, so that you can find out more about them yourself. But I did want to make it clear that, like, there is such a plethora of resources available right now, and some of them can be used together, and some of them can be used to leverage others. Not EPA funds with EPA funds, but the two Massachusetts awards. There may be some possibility to use together with Futures Fund. I don't know though. So this is the Clean Water Act, a Clean Water State Revolving Fund. SRF is, generally speaking, a loan program, but has a loan program with a high propensity for total loan forgiveness in the future if you are eligible. But there is a massive influx of dollars for the State Revolving Fund. And State Revolving Fund, you can work on point sources like your municipal sewer systems and your stormwater systems that have MS4 permits and that sort of thing. And you have and so this is the link where you look at your project eligibilities. And they have all of these resources for what's allowable, what's reporting, what's the requirement for working with it. These fact sheets are really, really helpful for giving you answers to what questions you probably have. I will say that there's also they've got a lot of infrastructure dollars coming in. What I wanted to show here is though that even though they are traditionally a loan program, they also have a grants program, which you'll see in their what's new lineup right here on the right. And I actually, when you click this link, you get this page here, which talks about this grant program. So there are a lot of resources within SRF to look at, because SRF is not just about clean water, it is also about drinking water. And they have a whole separate pile of funding that's dedicated to drinking water projects with state revolving fund. And again, they have a huge influx of infrastructure dollars, and they have, again, how to find out whether or not you're eligible, all kinds of resources on to figuring out whether or not this is something that's right for your project. Frequently asked questions, reports, fact sheets. This is where you go to find out about the projects related to drinking water that you might want to use SRF or state revolving fund dollars for. So in addition to these two resources, EPA also has a huge influx of dollars related to environmental justice. And there are so many environmental justice related projects going on, it's kind of hard to keep track. But if you go to this website right here, this is where EPA is announcing almost all of its environmental justice related grants. And these are the environmental justice related grants coming out of the headquarters office. It's coming from, they are dedicated to environmental justice. Unlike the Long Island Sound Community Impact Fund, which is a new program that we've created that you'll start seeing announcements for competitive funding, not this year, but next year, which is an EJ program that came out of National Estuary Program. But so this is where you go for finding EJ grants from EPA that are just about environmental justice. And so we have thriving communities, we have problem solving cooperative agreement program. And so this is really good for if your organization that you're working with in your municipality is not actually a government organization. And then we have, if you're an actual municipality, they have government to government program grants. Both of these are really helpful for addressing needs that haven't been met. And so I would highly suggest checking out these links as well. And you can see that it just keeps going. There are so many ways, so many things, so many different resources available on this website. There are so many dollars behind these programs right now. So there are many, many opportunities, but obviously we're hoping that you guys are interested in the Futures Fund. And then finally, I also want to take the opportunity to talk about some of the programs that Massachusetts is offering. They have a municipal vulnerability preparedness program, which again, I'm not an expert on, but there's a link here that so you can figure out what it is that you want to do, learn more about the program, the MVP program. You can get planning grants, action grants, you can talk to a person. This is definitely a place to check out for resources that Massachusetts offers. Massachusetts also offers grants and financial assistance related to watersheds and water quality, which again, there's a whole lineup. We have 319, which comes from EPA's 604B. So 319 and 604B both work together. 604B are those planning grants that we talk about with Futures Fund, and 319 is implementation. But there's the MS4 permit assistance, municipal assistance grant program, water quality monitoring grant program, sewage notification assistance program. There are a ton of resources, and really that's what I was wanted to talk about today, without spending too much time on it, because again, this is about NIFWIF. But just a quick heads up that there are so many resources out there, and now is the time to try to take advantage of them.
Thank you, Bessie. That was a really good overview. And also, just while Throwe Environmental is representing National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and Long Island Sound Futures Fund, we do help you navigate these other programs. I used to work at DEP, so I'm very familiar with the Watershed Grants. And So we also try to link you up with other programs while our focus is on Long Island Sound. It helps to understand how these programs operate because you might be able to leverage funding from one program to another program. So thank you very much. We're going to turn it back to Lynn now, and Lynn is going to go through some helpful tips and tricks for how to make your proposal competitive. And she's got a lot of great information and a lot of experience at what she's looking for in these proposals. So Lynn, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. So everybody can hear me? Yes, good. Okay, hi again. I'm now going to focus on some tips for creating a competitive futures fund proposal. And this will include some quick guidance about major parts of the proposal and things to think about when you're preparing your proposal. So here's a joke. We're now going to get into the parts or guts of a futures fund proposal. Next slide, please. Okay. So what you see is, again, a snapshot of the parts of a futures fund application. You'll see the word Easy Grants application in the title of this slide. Easy Grants is NIFWIF's online application system. So all these applications are submitted online. The parts include simpler sections like, you'll see to the left, contact and organizational information, location, map, and then the parts which take more time. That would be project information, because that's where you write your, what we call the two-liner. What is this project? Short description, and then your abstract. You have to deal with uploads, metrics, budget, match, and permits as relevant. So we give you this as a snapshot to kind of show you what you'll be putting together in terms of the application. Several useful tips from my experience for you. If you have questions for National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, or you want to ask a question via Kim through Throwe because they are a representative in the Upper Basin, always have your Easy Grants ID number, which is at the top left of the page. So you would have started your application. You haven't finished it, but you've been assigned a number. So you can see in the upper right, it says Easy Grants ID 57754. Maybe you're having trouble with the Easy Grant system. Maybe you want to ask us something specific about your how you're putting together the proposal. It's really helpful to always reference that number because it makes it easier for us to quickly respond to you. You'll see on the bottom left-hand side, there's a frequently asked questions and help bar. These are tailored to be part of the application that you're in. So if you're in the budget section, the FAQ help is tailored to questions associated with that budget section. And so they can be very useful resources for you. Please go ahead. You'll see again on the left this uploads page. Get in the system, check out the uploads page as one of your first tasks, your to-dos. It has a list of items and templates you will need to collect and prepare and then upload back into the proposal. So we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail, but I would recommend that you register in the system, even if you don't end up submitting an application. Familiarize yourself with it and you'll see the parts of this. If you look to the right, there's a big red circle with some checks and X's. This is the validation summary. And you can check on this anytime during preparation of your proposal. It helps you understand where you are in an application at any given time and what needs to be completed. You'll see a red X, incomplete, a green check mark, complete. You can work on the proposal in sections, moving in and out of Easy Grants over time. You don't have to do it in order or anything like that. Or although I did tell you, look at the uploads first, that would be really good. So, hey, I can't sit down for 10 hours and write my application. You can come back in and out of it and create it in the order that is comfortable for you. With one caveat, the map section, you have to prepare and save in one session. It's not like 10 hours. It's just like you're either uploading a shape file or drawing some lines or whatever. And there's lots of help for that one. But again, you have to do your mapping work first, and not first, but in one setting. But the rest of the application you can do as you're preparing it. Okay, next one. Okay, uploads. As noted, collect your documents early. So this is the tip sheet. This is the uploads page. As noted, the list of documents to collect, prepare, and upload. You should consider collecting some of these documents early so you can focus on the core elements of a proposal, like the budget and the narrative. You'll also see a template listed here, Long Island Sound Futures Fund full proposal narrative. One of the first things that you're going to want to download, because you'll be working on preparing that on your C drive, and then you'll upload it into the Easy Grants online system. So there are some templates that you should look for which have hyperlinks, but you can also see a full list of documents that you're going to prepare. And again, get them early. You know, it's the 11th hour, you're ready to submit and you're missing a document. No hair pulling, okay? All right, why don't we go to the next slide? Tips for preparing a competitive proposal. Further tips. Read the RFP. Yeah, I know. The most compelling part of the RFP is priorities and grant range. Yeah, I understand that is the most exciting part. We really recommend that you review the entire RFP because honestly, it really lays out requirements which inform development of your proposal. For example, you would need to think about timeline, budget, methods, and what you'll need to consider in terms of grants management. You're going to want to look at the sections like compliance, procurement, quality assurance, ineligible uses of grant funds. All of those inform timing, methodology, and cost. So I know it sounds very simplistic to say read the RFP. It's long, I know. It's not always the most compelling information, but I think it can be really useful for you. Sharply focus your proposal narrative. So the proposal narrative will address things like priorities, problem, solution, qualifications, community impact, and sustainability. The most competitive proposals will focus on the specific problem to be addressed during the start and end date of your project and how the problem will be addressed by your project. Okay, duh, Lynn, really? No, okay, well, here's what we see a lot. I know none of you would ever do this, but I feel the need to say it anyway. What we often see is a lot of narrative about the wider scope of the problem, such as pollution is an international issue. Pollution is a national issue in the United States. Pollution is an issue in New England. Pollution is an issue in Massachusetts. I'm sure all of these things are true. Here's what you want to say to sharply focus your narrative. Pollution is an issue in this watershed, which has a downstream impact on Long Island Sound, and this site or community, by working on this project, will be able to address those problems. So what you're doing is you're sharply focusing on the problem that you're able to solve or address relative to your specific project. All the other information, very interesting. We all learn lots of stuff when we review, but again, you only have 10 pages. So what you want to do is really focus to the problem and solution relative to your project site. And I say this because you all get enthusiastic and excited about addressing this wider problem. Very useful, but perhaps not the best strategy to really focus reviewer attention on what you're proposing to do. There are some guidance documents, again, that help you sharply focus a proposal narrative. So for example, the full proposal tip sheet, that document takes you step by step through the application. And I've actually put in a couple of examples about how to write an abstract and a project description. So if you print nothing else out, that would be a good one to print out, because I think it'll give you, especially if you haven't applied before or you need to be refreshed on applying, the tips document, we believe, is pretty helpful. It's also got lots of like information about the uploads or how to prepare a letter of support, things like that. So useful. Another guidance document relative to priorities is the metrics and implementation action tracking guidance. This is kind of a cool document, which I try and update, make better every year. But what it says is, this is the CCMP theme. Remember the plan theme that you're working in. So you all will be in Clean Waters and Healthy Watersheds. You'll be asked in your narrative to address implementation actions associated with the plan. I've got them listed in this document. And then it also shows the type of project activities and metrics that you might want to consider using. So again, I think it is both a brightly colored and useful document for you to look at, just to save you some time on preparation. Gathering your letters, relevant letters of support, photos, plans, and permission. Reviewers look for letters of support from partners, public agencies, targeted constituencies, or land manager or owner permission for work at a site. So again, it's worth getting these letters because they validate, yes, the targeted constituency is interested in participating, and see, this is valuable. The landowner or property manager has said, we could plan for this site or work on this site. The technical feedback from a public agency might say, this is the strategy that's being pursued and methods are appropriate technically to address the problem. Boom. Remember, technical merit is one of the factors that we're going to really take a look at in reviewing your proposal. So, and I find photos, not a lot, just a couple, can be very useful if you want to show, for example, before site conditions, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. We've also developed a guidance document, Letters of Support Best Practices, which is on the website. And again, hey, Throwe, you asked me to do this last year, so there it is for you to use as well. Next slide. Okay, here's some other really fascinating tips. Budget. Research the cost of contractual items. What does this mean? You can ask for funds for contractual help, such as from an environmental consulting firm. You would put that under contractual in the budget, but go ahead and research those costs and scope. This informs the budget development and your budget justification. So if you're researching it and you're going to an environmental consulting firm, you don't have to promise them the work. You can say, we're interested in developing a budget. We would definitely consider procuring funds from you potentially, or offering you the opportunity to competitively submit a proposal. But we really would appreciate just some upfront guidance on, we want to do this. What should we need to be considering in terms of the scope of work, and what will the cost be? It's a tremendous resource for you because you can write it into your narrative, you can provide good budget justification, and you can feel really comfortable with your numbers. So we highly recommend that you do this. I'm sure a lot of you already do this, but again, you don't want to run short or over ask for funds, and you can maybe get some really good ideas on how to participate. Budget notes, absolutely positively required to put in budget notes. They don't have to be 50 paragraphs, just a couple of descriptions about, what your assumptions are that you use to address these costs, what you're going to be doing. I know it feels repetitious with the narrative. Let go of that. This kind of repetition is actually beneficial to you. Also, if you were to receive grant funds, our compliance department would make you fill in all the budget justification sections. So you might want to do it sooner rather than later. For me, I like it too, because I go back to my original proposal if I've been funded, and I look at it and I go, what did I say? How did I figure that number out 2 years ago? And suddenly you've got it nicely documented. So I really highly recommend this. Here's something to remember, because I've seen this with local government, municipal government a lot. You may be in situations where you've submitted proposals to funders where they want to see your entire budget. we don't want to see your entire budget. We just want to see the part that you're asking for from us for futures fund activities for what you're proposing to get covered. So again, we don't need your whole budget. We just need the one that what you're asking for from us. A common mistake we also see is saying you're going to do something in the narrative and the cost of doing it is not shown in the budget or match. This raises questions in reviewer minds about how you're actually going to get this done if you haven't budgeted for it, but you've described it in a narrative. Remember, the budget and narrative should address what you will do with futures fund dollars and the cost of doing it. You may be doing other things, which are great. And you could say something like, we're going to do these other things. It's not covered by this particular grant. But I think it's always really good to sharply focus what you're going to do relative to futures fund. Okay, I mentioned collecting documents early. I'm going to talk about considering evaluation factors. And we've talked about different guidance relative to familiarizing yourself with the online system. But I want to talk about metrics one more time and link to the CCMP. Again, we have a calculator document for those who are actually implementing with a variety of different resources to potentially establish your prevention or reduction results from the project. It's called calculator resources. And then the metrics and implementation action guidance. Honest to God, like a giant mother bird, I am now regurgitating information into all my birdies, which is just look at this metrics doc and implementation action tracking document, and it's really going to help you with that narrative. Okay, next slide. Here's the project budget. I just thought I'd give you, I'm not going to tell you a lot of the how, but I'm going to tell you, I'm just showing you the what. It's a quick snapshot of your project budget. So the types of line items that you may apply for: personnel, anybody who works for your organization is under personnel that's associated with this project delivery. Travel, materials and supplies, that's anything that's $5,000, less than $5,000 per unit item. So equipment is anything $5,000 or greater as a unit item. So 5,000 pencils that cost $1 each goes under supplies because they're $1 unit cost. A hydrodynamic separator that costs $10,000 goes under equipment because it's over $5,000. Other costs are contractual, which we've talked about. And again, if you have a project partner that's not really making a profit from this, but just is helping you deliver the project, maybe it's local government, maybe it's a non-governmental organization partner that you want to potentially compensate for their activities to cover their costs, that's under a category called, it's in contractual, but it's subaward. So you can ask for those types of costs to appropriately engage your partners. Indirect, if you have, and folks that have this know what I'm talking about, is a negotiated indirect rate agreement with a federal agency, you can request that indirect rate. If you don't have that, it's called the de minimis rate, and you can request indirect up to 10% to kind of cover those costs that aren't necessarily related to direct project delivery, like a supply. But hey, everybody needs to keep the lights on and have a desk, right? Okay. Total costs. This is important because this is something that really trips people up. It's such a simple thing, but total costs on a budget page must match requested amount on the project information page. So remember when we were looking on the left side of that slide and it showed you the list of the elements, the guts of the proposal. So one of them was project information. So on that page, you're going to put the amount you're requesting from Long Island Sound Futures Fund. Say it's $250,000. And then you do your budget, and your budget, your total budget costs on the budget page are $250,000.56. If you were to try to submit, it wouldn't let you because the requested amount in the project information page and the budget page are different. So what you want to write is $250,000.56 to match the budget. You'll thank me for this. I know. Think about it later. Oh, Lynn, I'm so glad you brought that up. Okay, next slide. Okay, remember what I said about budget narrative? Always, 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 please add your budget narrative. You don't have to go crazy. Yeah, I know it's redundant. Get over it. You see there's this plus sign and a little, looks like a, I don't know what it is. Anyway, I don't know what that, I'm not even going to try, I guess. You think I would know. So always enter your budget narrative, and that's how you do it. So you're putting your personnel costs, you're putting your materials and supplies, and you're just, you're giving a little information. Okay. Okay. It's trying to sign me out. All right.
Yeah, I think we lost Lynn for a minute there.
I think we did.
Yeah, let's give her a second. I think she's probably going to hop right back on. Not sure what
While
happened.
she's hopping right back on, I'll just say that one of the tips that I used when I was a grant writer rather than a grant reviewer is whenever I read an RFP, I would look for buzz terms of things they absolutely wanted me to address. And then when I would address it in my response, I would say, I am addressing this buzzword. I would use the language of the RFP in my response so that reviewers knew that I was addressing the thing that they wanted me to review.
That's a great point, Bessie. And we were actually doing another presentation on a different fund, but a very similar fund yesterday. And one of the key points that I was letting folks know, not just to look at for the keywords, but to also go back to the RFP and kind of treat it like a rubric. So you can pull out those buzzwords and the program priorities and the evaluation criteria and, pretend that's a rubric. Look at it like you're scoring anything else on a rubric, and almost score yourself and, ask yourself the questions. Is this competitive? Would I give myself a 5 out of 5 on this? And if the answer is yes, then you're probably trending in the right direction. If it's a little hard for even you to pull out, where those different priorities come up in your proposal, then you probably want to make that a little bit clearer.
Absolutely.
So Kim, I just resent the link to Lynn, so she should have it at the top of her inbox.
Yeah, she's having trouble getting back in. But maybe we should just keep moving along. And I could kind of pick it up for her.
I think that works well. Are these slides still okay for you, Kim?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is sort of a repeat of an earlier slide, just the whole idea of uploading your documents and collecting your documents early. We can go on to the next slide. This is really important. These are the overall evaluation criteria, and we actually did get a question about community engagement and impact. So each of these program elements are evaluated in your proposal. And with regard to community impact, they really want to see that you have community buy-in, community engagement, partners, letters of support, and that the project is going to be a positive benefit to the community. The project has to be in alignment with the overall program goals and priorities. So that's in the CCMP. There has to be technical merit. So will your project, in fact, reduce nitrogen and have a positive impact on the Long Island Sound watershed? And then one of the things that Lynn had touched on with respect to the budget and cost effectiveness is that they really look at what the cost of the project is relative to the impact of the project. So that's something that you really, really want to look at, and whether the project's actually cost effective to implement. And Lynn, it looks like you're back with us now. So
I am. I'm sorry. Our system periodically forces us into reboots, which the staff hates. So I'm sorry to keep you all waiting, but Kim, good recovery. Thank you so much. And then of course it takes like 5 years to get it booted up again. So I'm sorry, but
no worries. No worries.
Really good job. So can we go back just a little bit? Would that be okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we back a little bit more. Thank you. I think Courtney's doing. So budget narrative, next slide. We talked about that. We talked about collecting the documents early and going into the system. Kim made a really good point on evaluation criteria. And the take home message for this is really, here's a little tip. Okay, so like I write grant proposals. I worked for an NGO. I worked for state government. I understand this is like a big deal. You really intensely focused on it. So first tip, get somebody else to read the proposal and look at the budget before you submit it, because I don't know, sometimes I look back on the past of things that I wrote, and I'm not saying I do this, but it actually looks like I might have been on edibles when I actually wrote the proposal. It's like I read it and I go, what the heck? So please have somebody else look at your proposal. And when they look at it, these are the evaluation factors, right? See if you're hitting those, because we have an evaluation form. The reviewers are asked to comment and score based on these factors. So make sure you got your program goals and priorities. Check CCMP. My technical merit. Yep, I've laid out my activities. I've got a good timeline. I've thought through what's required. Oh, I've addressed my community impact. My cost effectiveness. Okay, let me see. I've done my contractual and other estimations. Got my match set up. Yep, meets the minimum. And I've given some sense of the long-term sustainability of the project. Look at your narrative and your budget relative to these evaluation factors, because the published evaluation factors are truly what we use to evaluate and select proposals. Okay, next slide. Okay, I just gave a short list of guidance and resources, which we've already gone over during this presentation. So I know that Throwe is going to provide this PowerPoint and the recording. So this list will be there for you. But, you know, there's, as I mentioned, there's reviewing the looking at the RFP itself, the full proposal narrative, the metrics and implementation action tracking guidance. There's detailed budget instructions, the tip sheet, the help function in Easy Grants, the calculator resources. So there's a lot of these things that all exist on the page, Long Island Sound Futures Fund page. Okay, next slide. And last but not least, get this question a lot, Throwe does as well. Hey, this is a really cool grant program. Thanks for sharing. You got anything else we could potentially apply for? Yes, we do. So you also consider applying to the New England Forests and Rivers Fund, which is sustaining healthy forests and rivers that provide habitat for diverse bird populations, as well as freshwater and diadromous fish populations. Two interesting national grant programs. I think particular interest to potentially state and local government is America the Beautiful Challenge. And this is for locally led ecosystem restoration projects that invest in watershed restoration, resilience, equitable access, workforce development, corridors, connectivity, and collaborative conservation. I have to read that because it's not my program. Anyway, so that's an interesting one. And the America the Beautiful RFP is open right now. New England Forests and Rivers is coming soon. And then the National Coastal Resilience Fund, which seeks to restore, increase, and strengthen natural infrastructure to protect coastal communities while also enhancing habitat for fish and wildlife. That RFP is open as well. Okay, next slide.
Yeah, Lynn, so we did have a question, and I just wanted to let everybody know that we have put the links in the chat to those programs that Lynn just mentioned, and we will put the link to the Long Island Sound Futures Fund RFR in the chat as well. So make sure you grab that off the computer. Lynn, one of the questions that we had, and it might be good to go back to the overall evaluation criteria,
Great.
was how heavily is engagement, community impact weighted? So we have each of these evaluation criteria. Are they all weighted equally in the evaluation?
Yeah, we use a Likert scale. So it's a 1 to 5, 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest. And we do ask people, our reviewers, to look at these factors. if you don't create a link to the CCMP in program goals and priorities, it doesn't matter what else you're saying. If you're not dealing with nitrogen or nutrient loading and you haven't addressed it relative to the CCMP, it's like each one is important, equally important in a different way. So community impact's an interesting question. Sometimes projects really lend themselves to truly participatory engagement or action, but some of it's stuff that, like, maybe you have your consultant going out looking at hydrology, right, or soils or something like that. That doesn't necessarily lend itself to really fully engaging the community in their hydrological analysis. Not that it isn't fun or interesting, but we do. There are several cross-cutting principles associated with that plan, that CCMP: resilience to climate change, environmental justice, and sustainability. So community impact could be evaluated by things like, maybe your community has set a priority. Maybe not directly involved in project delivery at this point, but we want to know that this is maybe a shared priority. Or you do live in an environmental justice community, because one of the cross-cutting principles of the CCMP is environmental justice. Your community impact section can really lay out that there is a nexus to benefiting environmental justice in your community. So it really depends. I think community impact is shown in your methods as well as your description of, like, the demographics otherwise of your community, but it tells us also the potential link to things like resilience, sustainability of your community and your environment, or environmental justice. So I would say that, again, different projects have different levels of community engagement, but we like to know that all our investments have value to the community served.
Thank you, Lynn. So that basically concludes Lynn's program. We're a little bit behind. We will have some time again at the end for questions. And I think now would be a good time to transition to the Zoom breakout groups.
I think it's always worthwhile to say, you participated in the workshop. That doesn't mean this is the last time you can ask us a question or seek guidance. It's a lot of information. And again, that's why I didn't get into excessive detail within easy grants or excessive detail within parts of the proposal. It's more just a what. If you have questions about the how, you're more than welcome to reach out to Throwe or myself. So no worries there.
Thanks, Lynn. That's a great segue. So everybody's been assigned a Zoom breakout room based on the interest in the registration. And we're going to have about 45 minutes in these Zoom rooms, and then we'll all convene back together and have another opportunity to answer questions. So we'll see you in a few minutes.
So everyone should have their invite and they should be able to go in. Kim, I think just because you're the host, you'll have to add yourself. So you are in room 2, as you know.
Okay.
And if you need help with that, I can let you know how to do it.